1637. A reclusive philosopher drops a bombshell. I think, therefore I am. With 4 words, René Descartes didn't just prove his existence, he lit dynamite under the foundations of knowledge itself. Welcome to Guide to Reads, where we question everything. Today we're cracking open Discourse on the method, Descartes' radical manifesto for burning down faulty beliefs to rebuild truth from the ashes. So, what can you really know for certain? That question has haunted thinkers for centuries, and Descartes dared to answer it by doubting everything, even his own senses. This isn't just a dry philosophical treatise, it's a personal revolution in how we think, learn, and know. In today's episode, we'll uncover how Descartes dismantled inherited beliefs with surgical doubt, why he trusted reason over tradition, and how one man's quest for certainty reshaped science, logic, and our understanding of the self. So, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by conflicting ideas or unsure of what to trust, buckle up. This episode isn't just about philosophy, it's a guide to thinking clearly in a chaotic world. Let's dive in. 1. The limits of traditional education. Descartes began like many of us, seated in a classroom poring over philosophy, theology, logic, the supposed crown jewels of human knowledge. But the deeper he went, the more cracks he saw in the foundations. Sure, he admired mathematics, its crisp clarity, its undeniable precision. But everything else? Philosophy was full of contradictions. Theology debated endlessly with no agreement. And the more he learned, the more confused he felt. That's when the light bulb flickered on. The problem wasn't knowledge itself, it was the way we go about getting it. We all have the ability to reason. That's not in question. But Descartes argued that what separates wise judgment from confusion isn't IQ or education, it's method. A brilliant person without method can go wildly off course, while an average thinker with structure might reach the truth more reliably. So Descartes did something radical. He didn't toss out learning, but he did start doubting it. He noticed how even the most respected traditions were based more on habit than evidence. Books echoed each other. Cultural norms passed down like unquestioned gospel. Even brilliant-sounding ideas often had no link to the messy complexity of real life. So he left the ivory tower and hit the road, literally. Descartes traveled, observed, listened, and challenged what he'd taken for granted. Through it all, a single idea took root. Real knowledge doesn't come from authority. It comes from examining your own mind. That's when he made his boldest move yet, to question everything and rebuild from zero. 2. Building a new foundation for thought. Imagine a city built haphazardly over centuries, streets twisting awkwardly, buildings stacked without plan. That, Descartes argued, is how most people build their beliefs. Not from logic or clarity, but from layers of habit, hearsay, and inherited ideas. It's not that people are irrational, it's that their thinking is built on unstable ground. Education, upbringing, culture. All these mix together into a patchwork of assumptions that feel natural but often don't hold up under pressure. So what's the solution? Descartes says, start over, but not recklessly. Don't torch the old house in a fury. Think like someone walking through a dark forest. Step slowly. Test the ground. That's how he developed his 4-part method for thinking clearly. Accept only what's clearly true. Break problems into parts. Move from simple to complex. Review carefully and completely. This wasn't academic theory for Descartes, it was personal practice. He used it first on mathematics, not to crunch numbers, but to sharpen his reasoning. By focusing on structure and relationships, he trained his mind to spot clarity and reject confusion. But to truly think freely, he realized he had to go one step further. Let go of everything he once believed, unless reason could rebuild it from scratch. This wasn't destruction for its own sake. It was preparation for the boldest leap in modern philosophy, the moment Descartes would doubt everything and find the one truth no doubt could shake. 3. How to live while suspending judgment. So, you've torn down your beliefs. You're no longer sure what's true. Now what? How do you live when you've decided to trust nothing, yet? Descartes faced this exact dilemma. He wasn't a hermit or a monk. He lived in the world, among people with choices to make every day. So he devised a temporary moral code, a kind of mental compass to guide his actions while his mind was under renovation. First, he chose to follow the laws and customs of his country, and act according to the most moderate, widely accepted opinions. Not because they were true, but because they worked. Better to live by stable norms than risk chaos while testing new ideas. And when words and actions clashed, he trusted what people did, not what they said. Second, he committed to acting decisively, even without certainty. Like a lost traveler choosing one path instead of wandering in circles, he believed clear, consistent action was better than indecision. This helped him avoid regret, knowing his choices were grounded in reasoned judgment at the time. Third, he resolved to focus on controlling himself, not the world. Descartes knew peace doesn't come from bending life to your will. It comes from understanding what's within your control and letting go of what isn't. That shift brought him calm, contentment, and resilience. With these three principles, moderation, decisiveness, and self-mastery, he created a stable ground to stand on while questioning everything else. They gave him clarity, not by solving every problem, but by freeing his energy to think without fear. And as he journeyed through Europe, observing people, customs, and contradictions, he was quietly laying the foundation for a new kind of thought, independent, grounded, and radically his own. Next up, the discovery that would shake philosophy and the self at its very core. 4. Certainty begins with doubt. What if everything you believe, everything you see, touch, remember is wrong? Descartes dared to ask that question, and instead of retreating, he leaned in. He doubted everything. His senses? Deceptive? Logic and math? Possibly flawed? His own body? Might be a dream. He imagined the worst, a powerful force fooling him at every turn, even as he tried to think clearly. But one thing couldn't be faked, his doubt itself. Because if he was doubting, then he was thinking, and if he was thinking, he had to exist. That's how he arrived at his most famous insight. I think, therefore I am. It's not a slogan. It's a foundation. A truth so certain, not even the most radical doubt could shake it. From that one unshakable point Descartes rebuilt, he argued that the mind, not the body, is the core of who we are, and that clarity and distinctness in thought are signs of truth. But to trust this method, he needed to trust the source of those ideas. Where did they come from? Within himself, he found the idea of a perfect being, infinite, all-knowing, eternal. That idea, he reasoned, couldn't have been invented by a flawed mind like his own. It must have come from a perfect source, from God. If that perfect being exists, Descartes argued, it wouldn't deceive us. So, when the mind sees something clearly and distinctly, it's not being tricked. It's perceiving truth. With that, Descartes wasn't just proving God or soul. He was anchoring human knowledge itself. He showed that reason, not the senses, not tradition, is our clearest guide in a confusing world. Radical doubt didn't destroy certainty, it led him straight to it. And from there, a new philosophy was born. 5. A mechanical world, and a mind beyond it. Once Descartes had burned down faulty beliefs and built a new foundation, he turned outward, toward the universe itself. Could the entire physical world be explained not by magic or myth, but by reason alone? He thought so. Starting from the perfection of God, Descartes imagined a universe created from chaos, then left to unfold by natural laws, like a machine running on principles of motion, force, and geometry. In this vision, stars formed, planets spun, oceans surged, and fire danced, all without divine micromanagement, just rules and reason. Even the human body, he believed, was a marvel of mechanics. Using knowledge of anatomy, Descartes described how the heart pumped blood, how nerves responded to heat and touch, not as mysteries, but as physical systems, much like a clock or a fountain. But here's the twist. While the body could be explained mechanically, the mind could not. He drew a sharp line between us and the machines. No automaton, no matter how complex, could think, speak meaningfully, or adapt universally. Animals might act with surprising skill, but he argued they lacked conscious thought and language. Instinct, not reason. For Descartes, what made humans unique wasn't the complexity of our organs. It was the presence of a rational soul, a mind not made of matter, not confined by physical laws, and crucially, not bound to die when the body dies. So even as he embraced a mechanical view of nature, Descartes preserved a sacred space for the soul, one that reason could recognize but never fully dissect. A machine may mimic life, but only a thinking being can know it lives. And in that knowledge, Descartes found proof, not just of a world that ticks like a clock, but of a mind that watches it turn. 6. Why Descartes chose not to publish more. By the end of Discourse on the Method, Descartes stood on the edge of a new frontier, one he had mapped out with reason, skepticism, and clarity. He had developed not just a new way of thinking, but a new science of nature grounded in mechanics, mathematics, and precise observation. He imagined breakthroughs in medicine, technology, and human capability, a world where knowledge could heal more than it harmed. But he hesitated, because with radical ideas come radical risks. In a time when inquisition and censorship still haunted scholars, publishing the full scope of his discoveries meant exposing them, and himself, to misunderstanding, manipulation, and backlash. Descartes wasn't interested in winning arguments or becoming a public figure. He wanted truth. And truth, he believed, required time, testing, and integrity. He had seen what happened when ideas were released too soon. They got twisted, diluted, or turned into dogma. And perhaps more dangerously, they were used by those who didn't understand their method, just the conclusions. So, he made a careful choice. To share just enough. To light a beacon, not a bonfire. To invite serious thinkers to examine, apply, and extend his method. But not to hand them shortcuts or spark endless debate. Descartes believed true progress wasn't about publishing everything at once. It was about building something that would outlast him, a framework others could trust, use, and carry forward. And that's exactly what happened. By choosing restraint over recognition, he left behind something deeper than fame, a way of thinking that changed how we see the world and ourselves. Final summary: René Descartes didn't set out to impress the academic elite. He set out to rebuild knowledge from scratch. In Discourse on the Method, he invites us into that journey, one of radical doubt, disciplined reason, and intellectual courage. He begins by questioning everything, from his senses to his education, and lands on the one truth he can't deny. I think, therefore I am. From this single point of certainty, Descartes builds a method for discovering truth. Doubt the unproven, break problems into parts, move from simple to complex, review thoroughly. He applies this method not only to philosophy, but also to science, imagining a mechanical universe governed by rational laws, and a mind distinct from matter. The body, he argues, may be machine-like, but the soul is independent, rational, and immortal. To navigate life while suspending belief, he creates a temporary moral code. Obey social customs, act decisively, even without certainty. Focus only on what you can control. Descartes also warns against publishing prematurely, fearing misinterpretation, misuse, and shallow imitation. Instead, he urges readers to think for themselves, to use the method, not just memorize results. At its core, Discourse on the Method isn't just a work of philosophy. It's a manual for independent thought. It reminds us that true understanding doesn't come from inherited knowledge, but from daring to doubt, reflect, and rebuild, step by step, from the ground up. And there you have it. René Descartes didn't just give us a quote for philosophy textbooks. He gave us a blueprint for thinking clearly in a foggy world. Discourse on the Method reminds us that certainty begins with doubt, and that the journey to truth isn't about memorizing facts. It's about learning how to think. If this episode sparked something in you, a question, a challenge, or even a quiet moment of reflection, then you're already walking the path Descartes laid out. Stay curious, question boldly, and don't be afraid to rebuild your beliefs brick by brick. This has been Guide to Reads, where great minds light the way. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves deep ideas and clear thinking. Until next time, cogito, ergo sum, and so are you.